So let's talk about the allowing role in this dynamic. In the allowing role, you are the one who's giving the gift here, and the gift is the gift of access. So what you get to learn here is that there's more than one way to give. In allowing, you set aside your preference for how you might like your hand to be touched, but you keep your responsibility for having a limit. You do, in fact, have a limit to what you're willing to give. And we're not likely to hit it in this lesson, but when your whole body becomes playgrounds for both of you, you'll hit a limit there, and you need to hit a limit there. There is a limit to what you're willing to have done to you. So the allowing role is rests on that principle and is an opportunity to learn how to take responsibility for your limits and how to honor them, respect them, and communicate them. So that's sort of the essence of the allowing role. In this particular lesson, it's almost always easy and it's almost always quite enjoyable, and sometimes the hardest part can be actually noticing that you really are giving something here because it feels great. And usually that's because your partner's hand is not on a mission, and so it's relaxed, and the touch is often very sensual, very present. It's very sweet. So because it's so easy, it's hard to notice that there's actually quite a lot happening here. And again, most of this will show up later when you're playing with your whole body and the playing gets more complex. So I want to talk about just a little bit about that, the principles that are at play here. So the main principle at play in the allowing dynamic is that we have all, every one of us, been touched against our will in ways that we did not want and we did not like. And we also did not get some of the touch that we did want. And all of this happened before we could walk and talk. That means it's very deep in our nervous system. Our bodies know how to go along with stuff that we don't want. And to some degree, that feels kind of normal. And for many people, it feels so normal that it's hard to imagine anything else. So you might know in your mind, hopefully you do, that you have a choice about what happens to you. What's important is that you learn it with your body. And that's what this whole role is about. The degree to which you know in your bones that you have a choice about what happens to you and you take responsibility for your limit and communicate your limit, to that degree, the allowing role becomes very easy. There's a great deal of joy in just going with the flow of it. If you have any doubt at any level that you don't really quite have a choice or you don't know how to exercise the choice that you do actually have, to that degree you will be guarded. And you just won't be able to relax and go with the flow and play with it. So that's the principle that we're playing with here in the allowing role. And that's also why, even though the taking role is hard for almost everybody, the allowing role is all over the map. For some people, it's easy, it's like falling off a log. And for other people, it's extremely difficult and everything in between. And the reason is that big variation in how confident we are that we have a choice about what happens to us. And that we take responsibility for having a limit, respecting our limit, and communicating our limit. So that's what the allowing role is all about. What's far more likely is that it will feel great. I've had many people say, gosh, that feels so good, I feel like I'm receiving, which is really kind of just a misnomer about the nature of receiving. You have made an agreement to give access, so you are giving. The fact that it feels wonderful to you is simply a bonus. It has nothing to do with giving or receiving. It's just a physiological bonus that's happening for you. Pleasure is not something that you can actually give or receive because pleasure happens inside your nervous system. So you are still giving. It feels wonderful, great, aren't you lucky? And there is a certain joy and freedom in that allowing flow of letting someone play with you that's quite lovely, if, as I said, you trust your own limits. So that's the other principle, is that what creates the dynamic, what determines what role you're in is not how good it feels. They all feel good. What determines what role you're in is what was your agreement. So in this role, you agreed to give. It feels great, terrific. So what's the allowing role like as you play with it over time? Like I said, it's usually very easy here. As you expand your playing options, that's when it's all over the map. It can be very easy, it can be very challenging, and it depends on that inner confidence that you have about you setting a limit and having a choice. And then what often happens here is that you get to feel, you get to go with the flow, you get the pleasure of being touched and played with, you get to explore the experience of surrender, which can be quite sweet. There's a certain relief in this dynamic, because if you have often felt like you were just going along with stuff, you weren't really sure why, now when that dynamic is clear, it can be a big relief, like, oh, this actually is what's happening, and that's quite wonderful. So there's a lot of freedom here, fluidity, flexibility. It's quite fun to play with. And you also find here that quality of noticing that you are enjoyed and desired. Many women have the feeling that they've been desired, but for many men, this is a completely new territory and can be quite a revelation. So what you find here is that what you're giving is yourself, and that you are indeed worthy of someone's desire. Very sweet. So what the allowing role has to do with gender is nothing. This is not the so-called feminine role. Every person, regardless of what sex you are, regardless of what gender you are, you need time to be in the allowing role. And there are lessons here for you to learn and joys here for you to have. Has nothing to do with gender. It's applicable to everyone. So to recap all of this, it's the allowing role that teaches you that you do in fact have a limit to what you're willing to have done to you, and that as you take responsibility for that limit and you learn to notice it and respect it in yourself and communicate it, to that degree you will be trustworthy to yourself, and to that degree you will trust yourself, and to that degree you will relax and play and enjoy the flow. So any tension or anxiety in this role is a signal to you that you don't quite know that you do have a choice, and that there's an opportunity here to learn how to take responsibility for that choice. Again, most of this won't come up here in this lesson because it's just your hand. It's going to be pretty easy. But it definitely is a factor and will come up as you take this role into playing with it with the rest of you. So that's the allowing role. We'll go into it in more depth later when we talk about the whole wheel and draw it out and all that. But it's usually very easy to find here in this lesson. Hope you enjoy playing with it.